Okay, right. 305/320 session. Is it really week 9? I think it is, isn't it? Week 9. Wow. Well, I've got a long way into this. You've had 2 weeks of relaxation, rest and relaxation during HTML and Jquery mobile. Now we are going to start tackling dynamic data. We've got to get the data out of our web service and into our Jquery mobile page. Now, there's multiple ways of doing this. I'm going to show you one way, which is the sort of JavaScripty way today. And I've put a zip file with a complete example, working example on Moodle for you. So you're more than welcome to pick that apart and take bits out of it. Okay, because that's how real programmers work, isn't it? You never work from scratch, you always pick things apart and try and get things working. So the second approach, which is more Jquery style approach, I'm going to try and put an example together tonight and put that on Moodle as well, so you can compare the two different approaches. But today we're going to focus on the more traditional JavaScript approach for doing this. Okay, so you should have a a static Jquery mobile page which looks like the final app. And what you're going to do, we're going to start this week with just getting gets. So we're not going to worry about authentication, we're not going to worry about put or post or delete. We're going to focus on get requests only for this week. So obviously the example I'm giving you, the example I've taken from, I've built, applies to the Bookshop API. Now obviously you can't just lift all the code out and expect it to work first time. You're going to have to study it, understand it. I've put some comments in there to try and explain how it works. And lift sections out, modify them, get them working. You're going to have to build your app in steps, one screen at a time, aren't you? And test. Okay, so what we're going to cover today is we're going to talk about Ajax and how Ajax works. Now if you were in 205 this last year, the last session we ever did in 205 was Ajax, so we kind of covered the basics of it. We're going to look at how we get genres, books by genre or books by ISBN, and we're also going to look at what happens if there's data missing. Because what I've done in the API, every time I import a book, I try and grab a thumbnail for the book. But some books don't have thumbnails. So in the JSON data, some have a thumbnail field and some don't. It's just missing from some of them. And I'll show you a very simple way of detecting if there's a problem and dropping something in instead. So Ajax, this was around in that 2005, 2006. You've all used it before. If you ever used Google Drive, you've seen Ajax, where the data is communicating with the server without having to reload the whole page. You've seen it when you save things, it saves it in the background. It just gets on with it, and it doesn't have to reload everything. You've seen it in Moodle now. New Moodle 2 uses Ajax. We can drag files directly into Moodle without having to click and drag and upload and everything else. So the idea is the web page makes a JavaScript request. It uses JavaScript code embedded in the client to send a request out to the server for some data. And then the server returns the data into the JavaScript object, and then the JavaScript object can populate the page and change things around and modify things. It's how modern websites work. And normally the data comes back in XML or JSON format. You can see where this is going, can't you? Yeah, you've built your service, so effectively all we're going to be doing today is making Ajax calls. And that's how Jquery Mobile works. So we're going to populate the HTML through JavaScript. The JavaScript is going to generate the content for us from the data. So here's a traditional JavaScript function. This is the boilerplate code you're going to need for almost every page that you work on. This is how you do an Ajax call. The example I'm going to put on tonight is going to show you how to do what's called a JSON call, which is a slight adaptation of this. But if you look at it, let's look at the syntax to start with. Okay, there's my function. And I've got this dollar sign. That dollar means Jquery. We're using a Jquery function. And the Ajax function starts here and finishes here. So that whole block of code is one function. And it's called an anonymous function. We could have built these success and failure as separate functions by name, dropped them in, built a new function and called the function here. But we don't. The JavaScript way is you have these big inline anonymous functions, which makes the code very difficult to read unless you very carefully indent things. So as you can see, that's badly indented because I've run out of space. That should really be indented a little bit more. But can you see, there's the call, that's all the contents of the call. And if you look at it, you can see it actually has multiple parameters. So if you look at the call, what does a curly brace mean in JavaScript and JSON? What's the square bracket mean? Guys, you've been working with this for the last... The big square brackets, what's inside square brackets? Arrays. What's inside curly brackets? What's the other thing we dealt with? Dictionaries. Remember dictionaries? Key value pairs? What we have here is a JavaScript object, and it's a dictionary. From there to there, that curly bracket there, that's one massive dictionary. The reason JSON is called JavaScript object notation, it nicks its syntax from JavaScript. And this is JavaScript. This is where the syntax came from. This is the original usage of the syntax. So can you see we have a big dictionary from there to there. And the dictionary, you have key value, don't you? Comma, key value, comma, key value, and so on. Well, there's the first key, URL, and there's the first value. Okay, which I forgot to put the quotes at the end. Okay, remember the quotes. The comma, key, value, comma. Key is success, value is this function. That's the value. Function data down to there, look, see there's the comma, key, and there's another value, it's another function. So the way to think about it is this Ajax function takes a dictionary, and the dictionary values can be variables, literals like strings and numbers, or functions. You can use a function as a value in the dictionary. And that's what makes JavaScript A, so powerful, and B, so difficult to understand. Because it's very verbose, isn't it? But as you can see, that's the URL, that's my URI that I've got for my web service. That way, camera. Okay, you're now on camera for this video. Okay, so there's my URI. There's my second one, which says it's JSON. I'm going to get data back in JSON format. The third value is what happens, what gets run if it works. So this success thing, that data is my dictionary. That contains my entire dictionary of all the data I've got back from the request. And this bit, this function runs if there's a problem. So it either runs that one or that one. If everything's successful, that gets run and you can populate your page. If it goes wrong, that one gets run and you can display an error message on the screen. So it looks like a lot of code, but there's quite a lot going on there. So one dictionary which contains 1, 2, 3, 4 key value pairs. Two are strings and 2 are functions. Now, in the slides, I've actually got each bit of code in twice. The reason for that is the big one with no comment is for me to talk through today. The one with all the arrows on is if you forget what I've talked about between now and the video going online, you can use it as a reference. Okay, so that's why it looks like everything's in there twice. So let's have a look at the example. That's always the best way to learn these things. we're going to use an Ajax call to get all the genres from the bookshop. Now this is a good one because A, I wrote it, and B, it's not your API, so you can't just nick my code. And C, you've also done this using APIG, haven't you? You've done these requests already, so you kind of know what to expect. Now, the way we're going to do it is at the top of the page, I'm adding an extra script line. And all my JavaScript code is going to sit in a JS file on the server. So I keep it away from my main page, my main HTML. Now let's look at this is the JavaScript way of doing things. This is the one where I want you to look at initially. So there's in my code, on click, get books by genre. So there's my little link that's going to get all my genres. And as you can see, the JavaScript way is you have an attribute called onClick, and then this aren't going to fit on the slide. Let's just slide that across a little bit. I think we're losing a slight bit on the slides. That's better, right. So there we are. So as you can see, data transitions slide up, which we know about, onClick, get. In other words, when we tap that link, it's going to try and find a JavaScript function called get. And anything inside that JavaScript function is going to get run. So a really simple way of handling the events. And we're going to put the results on a new page, and let's see, and on the new page, there's a list view with no content. So there's a UL tag and a closing UL tag, but there's nothing between them. Because what goes between them is going to be generated by the JavaScript, isn't it? All the LIs are going to be built by JavaScript, because we need to get them from the data. So here's the start of our code. First thing is, let's have a look at the error. Because I've got nice simple error codes and the same structure of every error message, I can get my response text straight out of the response. Remember my JSON data that comes back with the response text? And then the message value, which is the dictionary item inside there, I can pull that out and say alert r.message, and that will display whatever the error was in a nice alert box on the screen. So can you see how that I did that first because so you can see how I'm processing the JSON data. It's so easy, isn't it? So Jquery parse JSON response.text, and then r.message gets displayed on the alert box. Okay, there's my comments. Right. Again, I think we're losing part of the slide here, so I'm going to just quickly slide that one across. It's about there, I think. Yeah, that's better. You can see what's going on. So let's have a look at this code now. So this is the code that's going to go in the success function. Does that make sense? This is going to go in the success function. I've left the rest of it out because it would be too much code to display. Now, if you remember, I said data, that parameter, is the whole of the JSON object. And if you remember from the genres, there was an array called genres inside there, wasn't there? Remember that? There was this status success, genres, and a big array of values. So $each, a nice little Jquery function, data.genres, that's my array, function I, genre. That's really powerful stuff. I is the array index, which will start at 0 and keep counting up so you know which index you're processing. Genre contains the dictionary at that index, or whatever data happens to be there. So I can very quickly loop through all my results. Now remember I said I had a UL called output1 on the previous slide, an ordered list, with no list items inside. Well, look at this one. ID output1 append which basically adds the list item into that unordered list. And every time it loops around, it adds an extra list item in. Nice and easy, isn't it? You can see how this works. And this is Jquery. So as you can see, I'm actually generating not only the list item with the link and whatever data transition, I'm also generating the JavaScript, the onClick handler, for the next page. You see how that works again? The difference between the previous onClick and this one is I want to pass a parameter to my JavaScript function this time, don't I? I need to know which ID, which item's been clicked on. Yeah, does that make sense? I need to know which item ID is being clicked so I know what to display on the next page. So I know which books to display. Genre, title, and you can have little bubbles, the count bubbles at the right-hand side. Well, genre.records tells me how many books are in that category. That's in my JSON data. So it will display, did I even show one? No, I didn't. This will display not only the category name, but also how many books are in the category. And that's what I mean when I said to you before about you're going to have to be tinkering with your API, aren't you, to get it to work exactly the way you want it to. Make some changes to it, modify it, and get it working the way it should. Now, up until this point, we're still on the first page, aren't we? We haven't moved to the next page. We do not want to move to the next page until the list is complete, do we? Otherwise, you'll move to the page and it'll be empty and it'll go and populate the list. We want to generate the list, display it, and then transition to the second page. Because if you remember, all the HTML pages are actually the same document, aren't they? So we can build this list without actually viewing the page at all. You understand that? It's all the same page, the same HTML, so we can generate the list in our HTML document, and then we can transition to the second page. So this is another nice bit of Jquery, mobile change page, and there's the ID of my page. So I can build all the data up, and then nice and elegantly display it, transition to the page. But there's a problem. If I did that, I'd have a bulleted list. Because the nice style you see applied to it has to get applied to the existing HTML. So if the HTML existed already and you loaded a page, it would load the HTML, it would then load the style, apply the style to the list, and give you a nicely formatted list. But we've added new list items, haven't we, since the page loaded. So it won't render, it won't apply the style to those list items. So what we have to do, we have to simply refresh. We have to refresh that list view. And that will then refresh it, reload all the style, and apply the nice list style to those list items. So there's a few bits to cover there, but fundamentally, I think I've covered enough there, so you can pretty much see where this is going, can't you? You can see how this is coming together. We can load a page, we can pull JSON data in, we can populate the next page ready to be displayed. We can then switch pages using JavaScript to the next page, and we can refresh the content of the page. And that will, to the end user, look like you've simply clicked on the link and it's loaded a page of content. But behind the scenes, all this is taking place. That's how it looks. There you are. There's your. That's how the list looks. So you can see I've got little bubbles at the side with how many items within each category. So, getting books by genre. Remember, let's go back a slide or two. This onClick get books with this genre ID. Notice the use of double quotes for the attributes and then single quotes for that, otherwise it's going to get very confused. So when I click on one of the links, it's going to run the get books function and it's going to be pass the ID of the category. And there it is. There's my function. So my URL now is going to have that ID parameter at the end, isn't it? So it knows which set of books to retrieve. And the rest of it is pretty much the same, isn't it? Once you built your error message thing working properly, you can just copy and paste it. Because as long as all your responses, all your resources generate the same format of error message, you only have to put this code, write this code once, and just keep recycling the same code over and over again. If your error messages are all over the place, you might need to have a bit of a rethink on this before you get on with this. So as you can see, all I've done is I've added the ID parameter to my URL. So I've got the right URL to capture the books. We are just about on the screen there, aren't we? And it's the same structure. You're going to be repeating the same type of code over and over again. This time, look at this one. Output 2 is my list of books on my next page. Why have I got to empty it first? What might happen? What's this doing? It's appending the list item. Yes. If you've gone to the first category and it displays 10 books and go back and go to the next category, it'll happily append the new books to the end of the list. And you've got 20 books or 30 books. You've got to make sure you empty it first before you fill it. To empty all the books in the previous usage out first. And this is the same, look, blah, 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 slide up, on click, get books. When I click again, I'm going to have a function called get book, and I'm passing the ISBN number, because if you remember the next page, the URI requires the ISBN number, doesn't it? To pull out the right book details. So I'm passing the ISBN number this time. Source equals book thumbnail, on error, blah, 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 yeah, image error this. Now, we'll come to that in a minute. On click get book, you've come across before. The thing you haven't come across before is this on error, which basically means if it goes pear-shaped, what do I do if something happens that goes wrong? And this is why we need this, because remember I said some books have thumbnails and some books don't have thumbnails. So we need to be able to trap that issue and resolve it. So when it displays each of the books, it's going to add a click handler, and if there's a problem displaying this book, it's going to run image error and pass the current object through. So $mobile change view, list view refresh, that's the same code. So can you see we're slowly building up your skills, your understanding bit by bit. And that's what it looks like. So front cover, front cover, front cover. Oops, it has another front cover. So what I want to do is display a generic photograph or a generic picture. Possibly not that one. Okay? It's all right. Ahmed did this one. He tried to find the most embarrassing picture he could find of me, and that's all he could come up with. Right, okay, so let's have a look. Look, get book ISBN. I've concatenated that a bit because it didn't fit on the screen, but look, I'm simply concatenating the correct ISBN number to the end of my request, which means I can then pull out the correct book details. However, I'm not generating a list, am I? The book details is simply a page of book details, isn't it? It's got the cover, the ISBN, the title, the author, the description, and so on. So this time I might have a p tag or a div tag in my page. In fact, this one, I think, if I remember rightly, my code, that was the div content. Div data all equals content. You know, the content section of the page. So this time, to the content section of the page, I'm appending an image and some paragraphs and a link to the reviews page. You see? And then I transition. Now look at this one. Empty it first, otherwise I'm going to end up with lots of books on the page, aren't I, one after the other, as I keep going backwards and forwards. Append all the data, change page. Same type of code. So hopefully you're finding that's not particularly challenging in terms of how the code works. Of course, getting it to work with your web service is another matter, isn't it? That's going to be a big challenge. Okay, and so this week, I'd like you to work on pulling the data, the gets, out of your web service and displaying them in your page. So you're going to be slowly replacing the static content of your pages with dynamic content coming from the API. Next week, I'm going to talk to you about how we do post, put, and delete for your web service. And that's how it looks when it's finished. I've simply done a float right on the image. And as you can see, there's the image, title, author, blah, 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 review at the bottom. Now, the one thing I haven't shown you is that placeholder code, have I? How to use the placeholder instead of the existing the image. So we need to detect if the image is broken. How long? Okay. What we do, there's my image error, look. Function image error, image on error. So we set the image to nothing. Then image.source equals myimage.jpg and return true. That's all you need. And that will just put whatever image you've chosen in your web service. And that's how it works. That's a slightly better image. And as you load each image, you put an on error, as we saw. So we've covered a fair bit today. We've covered Ajax calls. We've covered how we get from an API, a resource. We've covered how you pass parameters to the resource. We've covered how you handle errors, how you extract the data from the response and turn it into a dictionary and extract the arrays and display them, and how we handle this missing image error. Now, what I'd like you to do for your lab this week is obviously, has everyone got up to speed? Has everyone got the static page done? This shouldn't be too much of a hassle to get this done. Next week, it becomes more challenging, and the week after, we're going to talk about how we do mashups using Yahoo pipes and how we pull Google Maps in and all these kind of funky extra features. Okay, I've kept it short today. Short and sweet, hopefully. Okay, cheers very much.